The wine glass shattered against the marble floor, and everyone in the Choi family mansion froze. Madame Park Son-hee stood at the head of the dining table, her hand still extended from throwing the glass. Her face twisted with rage. She stared at the woman who just walked through her door. The woman she'd paid $100,000 to disappear 8 years ago. The woman who was now standing in her foyer holding the hand of a 6-year-old boy with the Choi family's unmistakable eyes. "Get out," Son-hee hissed, her voice venomous. "Get out of this house before I call security." Kennedy Morrison didn't move. She stood perfectly still in an elegant navy dress, her natural hair styled in a crown braid, her dark skin glowing in the chandelier light. Beside her, the little boy, Daniel, looked up at his mother with confusion, not understanding why the angry woman was yelling. And behind them both, standing like a dark angel in the doorway, was Choi Sung-ho, long black hair falling past his shoulders, cold, ethereal features that could have been carved from ice. The eldest son, the exiled heir, the one the family had spent 16 years pretending didn't exist. "Hello, stepmother," Sung-ho said, his voice quiet but carrying the weight of a blade. "We received father's invitation. We're here for dinner." Song-hee's face went white, then red, then white again, because standing at the far end of that dining room, in a wheelchair with an oxygen tube in his nose, was Chairman Choi Tae-yong, 91 years old, 8 weeks from death, and he was smiling. Actually smiling at the chaos unfolding in his foyer. "Let them in, Son-hee," the chairman said, his voice weak but clear. "I invited them, and we're going to have a conversation this family should have had 8 years ago." Kennedy Morrison stepped over the broken glass. Her heels crunched on crystal shards worth more than most people's monthly rent. Daniel followed, holding tight to his mother's hand, and Sung-ho moved behind them both like a shadow, protective, dangerous, ready for whatever came next. If you think this dinner's going to end well, you're wrong. If you think this family has any idea what's about to hit them, stay tuned, because what happens in the next hour will change everything. Hit that subscribe button now because you won't want to miss a single second of this. And do you mind if I ask you just one question? Where in the world are you watching from? Please drop it in the comments section. I love to see how these wonderful stories unite us all.
Afro Tales. The weak will become strong one day.
The dining room was obscenely elegant. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Pacific Ocean. A table that could seat 20, but tonight held only 7 place settings. Expensive art on every wall. The kind of wealth that whispered instead of shouted. Except right now, everyone in the room was shouting. "This is insane," spat Choi Yoo-jin, Min Jae's younger sister, standing up from her seat so fast her chair nearly toppled. "Father, you can't seriously expect us to sit here with her after what she did." "What I did?" Kennedy's voice was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that comes before hurricanes. "Please, remind everyone what I did. Say it out loud." Eugene's mouth opened, closed, opened again like a fish drowning in air, because saying it out loud meant admitting the lie they'd all been living. "You stole from this family," Sun-hee said, recovering her composure, smoothing down her designer dress with hands that shook slightly. "You stole our grandmother's necklace. 800 million won. You married my son for money, and when you thought you could take more, you stole a priceless family heirloom." Kennedy smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "Is that the story you've been telling? For 8 years? That I'm a thief? Because you are." "Then explain this." Kennedy reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope, placed it on the table with the careful precision of someone laying down a winning hand in poker. "Sale receipt for grandmother's necklace, sold to a private collector in Hong Kong, 3 years before I ever met Choi Min-jae. Authenticated, notarized, with the seller's signature right there." She slid the document across the table. Sun-hee grabbed it, read it. Her face went through 5 different emotions in 3 seconds. "This is fabricated," she said, but her voice had lost its certainty. Call the auction house. The number's on the letterhead. They'll confirm every detail, including the name of the person who sold it. Kennedy's eyes moved to the man sitting 3 seats down from Sun Hee. Choi Min-jae, 38 years old, multiple ear piercings, neck tattoo visible above his designer shirt collar. He'd been silent since Kennedy walked in, his cocky player energy completely evaporated. Now he just looked sick. Min-jae sold that necklace to cover his gambling debts, Kennedy continued, her voice steady as steel. 3 years before we met, and when I was stupid enough to marry him, when the family started asking questions about where the necklace went, he blamed me, because blaming the black woman was easier than admitting the golden boy was a thief. The silence in that room could have suffocated someone. Daniel, sensing the tension, pressed closer to his mother's side. Sung-ho's hand moved to Kennedy's shoulder, a small gesture of support that didn't go unnoticed by anyone at the table. "This is absurd," Min-jae finally spoke, but his voice cracked halfway through. "Why would I?" "Because you're a coward," Sung-ho said softly. When Sung-ho spoke, people listened. There was something about his voice, cold, precise, devastating. "You've always been a coward, Min-jae, even when we were children. Remember when you broke Father's antique vase and blamed the housemaid? She got fired, lost her work visa, had to go back to the Philippines. You were 12 years old and you were already destroying people to save yourself." Min-jae's face flushed red. "You have no right to come back here after 16 years and—" "I have every right." Sung-ho moved around the table slowly, like a predator circling prey. His long black hair caught the chandelier light, making him look otherworldly, dangerous. "I was exiled from this family because I asked questions, because I found evidence that Father was bribing government officials, that the company was hiding money offshore, that everything this family built was contaminated with corruption, and when I refused to stay quiet, I was given a choice. Sign an NDA and disappear, or face prosecution for corporate espionage with fabricated evidence. Sound familiar, Kennedy?" "Very familiar."
Chairman Tae-yang had been watching this entire exchange with something like satisfaction on his weathered face. Now he raised one trembling hand. "Enough. Everyone sit down. We're going to have dinner, and we're going to talk. Really talk. For the first time in this family's history." "I'm not sitting at the same table as—" Eugene started. "You'll sit, or you'll be removed from my will entirely," the chairman said, his voice gaining strength. "Choose now." Eugene sat. So did everyone else. Slowly, reluctantly. Kennedy took the seat directly across from Min-jae, maintaining eye contact the entire time. Daniel sat beside his mother, and Sing-ho took the seat at Kennedy's other side, creating a protective barrier between her and the rest of the family. Servants appeared with the first course, some expensive soup that probably cost more per bowl than Kennedy used to make in a week. No one touched it. The tension was too thick to swallow food through. "Let me tell you all a story," Kennedy said, picking up her water glass with steady hands. 8 years ago, I was 26 years old, MIT graduate, tech consultant. I spoke at a conference in Seoul, and a charming man with tattoos and a smile that promised the world approached me afterward. Choi Min-jae. He was funny, attentive. He pursued me for 6 months before I agreed to marry him. Min-jae stared at his soup bowl, couldn't meet her eyes. "The wedding was small," Kennedy continued. Min-jae said his family preferred intimate ceremonies. What he meant was his mother refused to attend, claimed she had the flu. But I saw the Instagram posts. Sun Hee was at a charity gala that same night, perfectly healthy, telling everyone who'd listened that her son was making a terrible mistake. Sun Hee's jaw clenched, but she didn't deny it. I moved to Seoul, tried so hard to fit in. I spent 6 months learning Korean, 8 hours a day with a tutor until I could have conversations. I learned to cook traditional dishes from YouTube videos. I attended every family gathering, even though Eugene made comments about my hair being unprofessional, and Sun Hee asked if I was sure I'd be more comfortable at the staff table. Eugene's face flushed, caught.
"I tried," Kennedy said, her voice finally showing a crack of emotion.
God, I tried so hard to make this family accept me. And the whole time, Min-jae was gambling away millions, coming home at 3 a.m. smelling like whiskey and someone else's perfume, taking cash advances on credit cards I didn't even know existed. And when I asked questions, he called me paranoid, said I was imagining things, made me feel crazy for noticing that something was very, very wrong. A single tear rolled down Kennedy's cheek. She didn't wipe it away. Let them see it. And then the necklace went missing. And suddenly there were private investigators following me, taking photos of me meeting with jewelry appraisers, which I was doing to get an appraisal for Min-jae's birthday present. Photos of me asking questions about the necklace's value, because Min-jae asked me to get it appraised for insurance. Everything I did was twisted. Everything was made to look guilty. And when the family lawyers sat me down and showed me all this evidence, I was terrified. I was alone in a foreign country, facing theft charges that would put me in prison for 10 years. You signed the papers, Sun-hee said coldly. Guilty people sign. Scared people sign? Kennedy's voice rose for the first time. I was 27 years old, alone, terrified, and you gave me a choice. Take $100,000 and disappear, or go to prison in a country where I barely spoke the language and had no one to help me. So yes, I signed your papers. I took your money, and I left. She paused, took a breath. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter, more dangerous. What you didn't know, what Min-jae didn't know because he'd blocked my number 2 days after I signed those papers, was that I was pregnant. I found out 2 weeks after the divorce was finalized. I tried to tell him, called, emailed, sent messages through his assistant, nothing. He'd erased me like I never existed.
Every head at the table turned to look at Daniel, the 6-year-old boy who was quietly eating soup, completely unaware that he was the bomb that had just detonated his biological father's life. "That's impossible," Min-jae whispered. "I would have known." "How would you know?" Kennedy's laugh was bitter. "You blocked me on everything. Your NDA prevented me from contacting the family. I was alone, pregnant, with $100,000 that wouldn't last long in Los Angeles. So I got a job as a barista, worked double shifts, saved every penny, prepared to raise a child by myself." Chairman Taeyong was crying, actually crying, tears streaming down his weathered face as he looked at Daniel, his great-grandson that he'd never known existed. "Tell them the rest," Sung-ho said quietly. His hand found Kennedy's under the table, squeezed gently. Kennedy nodded. 6 months into my pregnancy, a customer walked into my coffee shop. Tall, pale, long black hair, looked like he belonged in a Gothic novel, not a UCLA coffee shop. He ordered a black coffee, and when I handed it to him, he saw my name tag, Kennedy Morrison, and he said, "You're Min-jae's ex-wife." She looked at Sung-ho, smiled softly, the first real smile since she'd entered the house. I almost dropped the coffee pot. I thought he was there to threaten me, to enforce the NDA, to make sure I stayed silent. Instead, he sat down at a corner table and waited until my shift ended. And then he said 5 words that changed my life. They did it to me, too. Sung-ho took over the story, his cold voice somehow warmer when talking about Kennedy. 16 years ago, I questioned this family's practices, found evidence of bribery, corruption, offshore accounts hiding millions from tax authorities. When I refused to stay quiet, Father and Sun-hee gave me the same choice they gave Kennedy: sign papers and leave, or face prison with fabricated corporate espionage charges. I chose exile, built my own company from nothing, made my own money, told myself I didn't need this family.
He looked at Kennedy, really looked at her, and everyone in the room could see it. The love, the partnership, the way they'd saved each other. But seeing Kennedy pregnant, alone, destroyed by the same people who destroyed me, I couldn't walk away. We became friends, then more than friends. I was there when Daniel was born, cut the umbilical cord, held him when he cried at 2 a.m., taught him to ride a bike and read books, and asked him what he wanted to be when he grew up. Papa Sung-ho says I can be an astronaut, veterinarian, chef, Daniel piped up helpfully, looking up from his soup. Because you can be more than one thing. The word Papa hit the table like a physical blow. Min Jae looked like someone had punched him in the stomach. His son, his biological son, called another man Papa, and that man had earned the title by doing something Min Jae had never learned: showing up. We got married when Daniel was 1. Small ceremony in San Francisco. Daniel was our ring bearer, and for 7 years we built a life, a real one, not based on money or status, based on truth, on showing up every single day, on being a family. "So why come back?" Eugen asked, her voice smaller now, less certain. "If you have this perfect life, why come back here?" Kennedy reached into her purse again, pulled out another envelope, this one thicker. "Because 3 months ago, I hired a forensic accountant, and I learned something interesting about my ex-husband." She slid the new documents across the table. Mi Sun, the chairman's sister and Chai-Tech's CFO, picked them up. Her eyes widened as she read. "Oh, Min Jae, what did you do?" "What did he do?" Kennedy's voice was ice. "He embezzled 40 billion won from Chai-Tech Industries over 6 years, approximately 30 million US dollars. Offshore accounts, wire transfers, systematic theft from the family company. The gambling debts weren't just a few bad nights. He was addicted, lost millions, and he covered it by stealing from the company his grandfather built." The room exploded. Sun Hee screaming, Eugen crying, Mi Sun reading through documents with increasing horror, and Min Jae, player, heartbreaker, golden boy, Min Jae just sat there with his head in his hands, all his cocky swagger completely demolished.
"I didn't come here for money," Kennedy said, her voice cutting through the chaos. "I don't need your money. Seung-ho and I are doing just fine. I came here because Chairman Taeyong is dying, and he sent his son an invitation that said, 'Before I die, truth.' So here's the truth. Min Jae is a thief, a coward, a man who destroyed me to save himself, and I wanted him to face what he did before his father dies." Chairman Taeyong spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Min Jae, is this true?" Min Jae didn't answer, didn't need to. His silence was confession enough. "I'm calling the prosecutors in the morning," Mi Sun said, standing up with the documents. "This is federal crimes, fraud, embezzlement, money laundering. Min Jae, you're going to prison." "No!" Sung Hee lurched forward. "You can't! He's your nephew! We can fix this!" "We can't fix this," the chairman said, and there was finality in his voice, the finality of a dying man who'd run out of time for lies. "Min Jae, you're fired from Chai-Tech, effective immediately. Your assets will be frozen pending investigation, and tomorrow morning I'm calling federal prosecutors myself." Min Jae stood up so fast his chair fell backward, ran from the dining room. They could hear him in the hallway, retching, the sound of a man's life imploding. Kennedy watched him go without expression. Then she turned to Daniel. "Sweetheart, why don't you go with Aunt Meeson to see the library? I bet there are some interesting books there." Daniel looked uncertain. "Are you okay, Mama?" "I'm perfect, baby. Go ahead." Meeson led Daniel out of the dining room, and the moment the door closed, Kennedy turned to Sun Hee. "You destroyed me 8 years ago, called me a thief, a gold digger, made everyone in Seoul society believe I'd married your son for money. You ruined my reputation so thoroughly that I couldn't get consulting work for 3 years. Had to use a different last name on job applications because Googling Kennedy Choi brought up articles about the theft scandal." Sun Hee's face was stone, but her hands shook.
"I learned Korean for you," Kennedy continued, her voice breaking. "I cooked your favorite foods. I bowed at your ancestral shrine, even though it meant nothing to me spiritually, because I wanted to respect your culture. I tried so hard to make you see me as human, as your daughter-in-law, as someone worthy of basic dignity. And you treated me like garbage, like I was disposable, like I was nothing. I was protecting my family. From what?" Kennedy's voice rose to a shout. "From me loving your son? From me wanting to be part of your family? What exactly were you protecting them from, Sun Hee? From the possibility that your precious bloodline might include someone who didn't look like you?" The word hung in the air. The thing no one had said explicitly, but everyone had known. Race. The real reason Sun Hee had hated Kennedy from day one. "I didn't," Sun Hee started. "Don't lie," Sung Ho said, his cold voice cutting through. "I remember what you said at the wedding reception I attended against Father's wishes. You told your friends that Min Jae had developed a taste for exotic women, and you hoped it was just a phase. I was 17 years old, and I knew it was wrong. You were 59, and you said it with a smile." Sun Hee's face crumbled. Because being confronted with your own cruelty, spoken aloud by witnesses who remember every word, that's a special kind of hell. "I have one question for you," Kennedy said, leaning forward. "Was it worth it? Destroying me, forcing me out, lying to everyone about what I'd done. You got what you wanted, I was gone. But now your son is going to prison. Your perfect family is exposed as corrupt. Your dying father-in-law knows the truth. And your grandson, your actual blood grandson, calls another man Papa. So tell me, Sun Hee, was it worth it?" Sun Hee opened her mouth, closed it. No answer. Because there was no answer. Nothing she'd protected had been worth the destruction she'd caused.
Chairman Tae-young wheeled himself closer to the table, closer to Kennedy. "I owe you an apology. I knew, deep down I knew something wasn't right about your divorce, about the theft accusations. But I let Sun Hee handle it because I was too busy with the company, too focused on profits to pay attention to people. And because of my neglect, my cowardice, I lost my grandson. I have a great-grandson I've never met, and I have maybe 2 months left to know him." He looked at Daniel through the dining room door window, watching the boy browse books with me son. "He has my eyes, my father's eyes, 4 generations looking back at me, and I almost never knew he existed." The chairman turned his wheelchair to face Sung Ho. "You were right about everything. The bribes, the corruption, all of it. I was building an empire, but I was building it on lies. And I lost you, my best son, because I couldn't admit I was wrong." Sung Ho's cold expression cracked, just slightly. "I didn't want to be right. I wanted you to love me anyway. I always loved you. I just loved control more, and that was my greatest failure." The chairman reached out a shaking hand. Sung Ho hesitated, then took it. Father and son, holding hands for the first time in 16 years, while death waited in the wings. "I'm changing my will," the chairman said. "Sung Ho, you'll inherit Chi-Tech. Me son will be COO. We'll restructure the company to operate ethically, and $50 million will go to tech education programs for underprivileged kids. The kind of programs that might help children like Daniel, who come from complicated families." "I don't want Chi-Tech," Sung Ho said. "I have my own company." "Then make it better than I did. Make it good." The chairman looked at Kennedy. "And you, I can't give you back 8 years, can't undo the damage, but I can do this. Public statement tomorrow, announcing that the theft charges against you were false, that you were wrongly accused, that this family owes you an apology and restitution." Kennedy shook her head. "I don't want restitution. I want something else. Name it. I want Min Jae to face justice, real justice, not a settlement, not a cover-up. Prison time, public trial. Let everyone see what he did. To the company, to me, to our son. Can you do that?"
The chairman looked at Sun Hee. She was crying silently, but she nodded, because what choice did she have? Her son was guilty. The evidence was overwhelming, and fighting it would only make everything worse. If you're thinking this story can't get more intense, stick around, because what happens next will either restore your faith in justice or break your heart completely. Let me know in the comments if you think Kennedy is being too harsh, or if this is exactly what Min Jae deserves. I'll call the prosecutors myself, the chairman said. Tomorrow morning, Min Jae will surrender. He'll face trial, and whatever sentence he receives, he'll serve it. Kennedy nodded. It wasn't satisfaction she felt, wasn't triumph, just exhaustion. The exhaustion of carrying rage for 8 years and finally being able to set it down. "Can I see Daniel?" the chairman asked quietly. "Just for a few minutes, before you leave. I'd like to meet my great-grandson properly." Kennedy looked at Sung Ho. He nodded. "Daniel's choice. We'll ask him. If he wants to meet you, he can. But Kennedy and I will be with him the entire time, and if he wants to leave, we leave immediately." "Fair enough." Mi-sun brought Daniel back to the dining room. The boy looked around at all the tear-stained faces with concern. "Is everyone okay? Did someone get hurt?" "Everyone's fine, sweetheart," Kennedy said, pulling him close. "But I want to ask you something. This man in the wheelchair is your great-grandfather. He'd like to talk to you. You don't have to if you don't want to. It's completely your choice." Daniel studied the chairman with the serious consideration of a 6-year-old making an important decision. Then he walked forward, stopped in front of the wheelchair, bowed, a perfect 90-degree Korean bow that Kennedy had taught him. "Hello, great-grandfather. My name is Daniel Choi. I'm 6 years old. It's nice to meet you." The chairman broke down completely, reached out and touched Daniel's face with trembling hands. "You're perfect. Absolutely perfect. Tell me about yourself. I want to know everything."
For the next 20 minutes, Daniel talked about dinosaurs, about wanting to be an astronaut, about his school where his best friend was from Mexico and they were teaching each other Spanish and Korean, about the book his mama wrote called The Boy with Two Fathers that his class read and everyone said was the best book ever, about how Papa Sung Ho taught him to code and they were building a video game together about a robot who learns to feel emotions. The chairman listened to every word like it was scripture, like this child was the only thing in the world that mattered. And maybe, in that moment, he was. "Would you like to see my company sometime?" the chairman asked. "Chai Tech Industries. We make technology that helps people, computers, phones, things that connect the world." Daniel's eyes lit up. "Really? Can Papa Sung Ho come?" "Of course, both your fathers can come, and your mother, anyone you want." "Okay, can we go see great-grandfather's company?" Kennedy looked at Sung Ho. Another silent conversation. "We'll talk about it, baby. Maybe." That maybe was everything. It was hope. It was possibility. It was the door not being completely slammed shut, and the chairman heard it, clung to it. "Thank you," he whispered to Kennedy. "Thank you for giving me a chance to know him." Kennedy didn't respond, just gathered Daniel close, because she still wasn't sure if the chairman deserved that chance, if any of them did. But Daniel was 6 years old, and he deserved to know where he came from, even if where he came from was complicated. They left shortly after. Sun Hee had disappeared to her room. Yu Jin mumbled an apology that might have been sincere but probably wasn't. Min Jae was locked in his old bedroom, alternating between panic attacks and desperate calls to lawyers who couldn't help him. And the chairman sat in his wheelchair in the foyer, watching Kennedy, Sung Ho, and Daniel walk to their car. "Will we see you again?" he called out. Kennedy paused, turned. "Ask me in 6 months, after Min Jae's trial, after I see if this family actually changes or just says they will. Then maybe we'll come back."
It wasn't a promise, but it wasn't a no. And for a dying man who'd spent 91 years making mistakes, that maybe was a gift. They drove away from the Malibu mansion in Sung Ho's Tesla. Daniel fell asleep in his car seat within 10 minutes, exhausted from the emotional intensity,
even if he didn't fully understand it. Kennedy stared out the window at the ocean, silent. "You okay?" Sung-ho asked, quietly, his long hair tied back now for driving, one hand on the wheel and one hand finding Kennedy's. "I don't know. I thought revenge would feel better. Watching Min-jae's life fall apart, watching Sun-hee realize she destroyed everything she tried to protect. I thought it would feel satisfying, but it just feels sad." "That's because you're not interested in revenge anymore. You're interested in justice, and justice is always complicated." Kennedy squeezed his hand. "Did we do the right thing, bringing Daniel there?" "I don't know, but we gave him the choice. That's more than anyone gave us." "Your father's dying." "I know. Are you going to forgive it?" Sung-ho was quiet for a long moment. "I think I already have. Not because he deserves it, but because carrying that anger for 16 years was exhausting, and I want to spend whatever time I have left with you and Daniel, not with ghosts." Kennedy leaned over and kissed his cheek. "I love you. You know that, right?" "I know. I love you too." Behind them, Daniel mumbled in his sleep, something about dinosaurs and spaceships, dreaming 6-year-old dreams where adults didn't complicate everything with pain and pride and prejudice. 3 days later, Choi Min-jae was arrested. Federal prosecutors, media circus, cameras everywhere. He was charged with embezzlement, fraud, and money laundering. His bail was set at 50 million won. Sun-hee paid it, because despite everything, despite the lies and the theft and the destruction, he was still her son. The trial lasted 4 months. Kennedy testified, Sung-ho testified, Mi-sun testified with forensic accounting records that left no room for doubt. Min-jae's lawyers tried every defense: addiction, mental illness, family pressure. None of it worked. The evidence was overwhelming.
Choi Min-jae was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. With good behavior, he'd serve 5. The judge was not sympathetic. "You didn't just steal money," she said at sentencing. "You destroyed a woman's reputation. Let your own child be born without a father, and betrayed the family that gave you everything. 8 years is lenient compared to what you deserve." Min-jae cried during sentencing, not the tears of remorse, the tears of a man realizing he'd finally have to face consequences, that his mother couldn't save him, that his looks and charm and family name meant nothing in federal court. Kennedy watched from the gallery, felt nothing, no satisfaction, no anger, just closure. The chapter was finally closed. Chairman Choi Tae-young died 6 weeks after Min-jae's sentencing, peacefully in his sleep, surrounded by family. Sung-ho was there, Kennedy was there, and Daniel was there, holding his great-grandfather's hand and telling him stories about space robots until the old man's breathing stopped. The funeral was massive, hundreds of mourners, Korean and international media, business leaders, politicians. The president of Korea sent condolences, but the people who mattered most were in the front row. Sung-ho, Kennedy, and Daniel, the family that the chairman had almost destroyed, but at the end had fought to save. Sun-hee approached Kennedy after the funeral, looked older, smaller, broken by grief and guilt. "May I speak with you?" Kennedy nodded. They walked to a quiet corner of the cemetery, away from the crowds. "I owe you an apology," Sun-hee said. "I destroyed you because I was afraid. Afraid of what people would think. Afraid that my son loving you meant he didn't need me. Afraid that accepting you meant admitting my prejudices were wrong. And because I was too cowardly to face those fears, I destroyed you instead." Kennedy waited. Let her continue. "I can't undo what I did. Can't give you back those years. But I'm asking, begging for a chance. To know Daniel. To try to be the grandmother I should have been from the beginning. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm asking anyway."
Kennedy studied Sun-hee's face, saw genuine remorse, but also saw the woman who'd called her exotic, who'd made her feel subhuman, who'd spent 8 years telling everyone Kennedy was a thief. "I'll think about it," Kennedy said. "Not for you, for Daniel, because he deserves to know all his family. But you're on probation. You earn your place in his life, and if you ever make him feel like he's less because his mother is black, you'll never see him again. Understood?" "Understood." "Ask me again in a year, after you've proven you've changed. Then maybe." Soon he nodded, grateful for the maybe, because maybe was more than she deserved. 3 months after the funeral, Kennedy, Sung-ho, and Daniel stood in the Chi-Tech Industries lobby. Sung-ho was officially CEO now, had spent 90 days restructuring everything. Ethical guidelines, transparent accounting, living wages for all employees, donations to education programs. The stock price had dropped initially, then climbed higher than ever. Turns out, investors liked companies that weren't criminal enterprises. "Ready?" Sung-ho asked Kennedy, adjusting his black suit, his long hair pulled back in a professional style that somehow made him look even more like a vampire prince. "Ready," Kennedy said. She was Chi-Tech's new chief ethics officer, a position Sung-ho had created specifically for her. Someone whose entire job was to make sure the company never again destroyed people to protect profits. Daniel wore a visitor badge and held both his parents' hands. "Can I see the robots, Papa?" "After the board meeting, buddy, I promise." They walked into the building together, the family that shouldn't have existed, the black woman they'd tried to erase, the exiled son they'd tried to forget, and the child who'd brought them all back together. Above them, on the wall, a new portrait hung, Chairman Choi Tae-yong, and beneath his official photo, a quote he'd chosen for his memorial. "A legacy isn't what you leave behind, it's what you teach the next generation to do better."
Kennedy looked at that quote and smiled, because maybe, just maybe, they were doing better. Not perfect, not healed, but trying. And sometimes, trying is enough. That evening, they hosted Daniel's 7th birthday party at their San Francisco home. Small, intimate, friends from school, Kennedy's parents via video call, Mi's son, who had become Daniel's favorite aunt, and one surprise guest. The doorbell rang. Daniel ran to answer it. Sun-hee stood on the doorstep holding a carefully wrapped present. She looked nervous, hopeful, like a woman trying to earn redemption, one birthday party at a time. "Grandma Sun-hee," Daniel said, because Kennedy had explained that Sun-hee was his grandmother and that sometimes people make mistakes, but they can try to do better. Sun-hee knelt down, hugged him carefully. "Happy birthday, Daniel. May I come in?" Daniel looked back at Kennedy. She nodded. Permission granted. One chance. Sun-hee answered, sat quietly in the corner at first, watching Daniel play with his friends, watching Kennedy laugh with other parents, watching Sung-ho be the father Min-jae had never been. And slowly, so slowly, she began to understand what she'd almost destroyed. Later, after the kids went outside to play, Kennedy found Sun-hee alone in the kitchen. The two women who'd been enemies for 8 years, standing 3 feet apart with a lifetime of hurt between them. "Thank you for letting me come," Sun-hee said quietly. "I didn't do it for you. I did it for Daniel. He deserves to know all his family, even the complicated parts. Can you ever forgive me?" Kennedy considered this. Forgiveness. The thing everyone said she should do, but no one explained how. "Ask me again in a year, after you've proven you've changed, after Daniel knows you as his grandmother, not as the woman who hurt his mother. Then maybe I can forgive you. A year. I can do that. We'll see." Sun-hee left shortly after. Kennedy watched her go, felt Sung-ho's arms wrap around her from behind, his long hair falling forward to create a curtain around them both. "You okay?" he asked. "I don't know. Forgiveness is hard." "It is, but you don't have to rush it. Take all the time you need."
Outside, Daniel's laughter floated through the window, playing with friends, unaware of adult complications, just being 7 years old. Happy, safe, loved by 2 fathers and a mother who'd survived everything to give him the life he deserved. Kennedy leaned back into Sung-ho's embrace. "Did we do the right thing? Coming back? Exposing everything?" I think we did the only thing we could do. We told the truth, and we let the family decide what to do with it. Min-jae's in prison. Min-jae put himself in prison. Your father died. My father died at peace, finally understanding what actually mattered. That's more than most people get. Kennedy turned in his arms, looked up at this pale, beautiful, dangerous man who'd saved her when she needed saving, who'd loved her son as his own, who'd shown her that family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up, who stays, who love you even when it's hard, who choose you every single day and mean it. The Choi family had tried to erase Kennedy Morrison, had paid her to disappear, had destroyed her reputation and stolen her dignity. But Kennedy hadn't disappeared. She'd survived, rebuilt, thrived, and now she stood in her own home, surrounded by people who loved her, with a son who'd never doubt his worth and a partner who'd shown her that love doesn't come with conditions. Min-jae would serve his time. Sun-hee would attend therapy and try to earn redemption. Yoo-jin would volunteer and attempt to undo her prejudice. And Kennedy, Sung-ho, and Daniel would continue building their life. Not perfect, not free from complications, but real, honest, theirs. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction, it's survival. It's building something beautiful with the pieces others tried to break. It's teaching your child that they come from complicated people, but they don't have to be complicated themselves. They can just be loved. And that love, fierce, chosen, daily love, that's the legacy worth leaving behind.
K Afro Tales. The weak will become strong one day.